Okay, welcome everyone to Red Spotlight. I'm your host, Alexis, and I'm joined by David Francisco. It is now August, which means we are in kind of a bit of a dead zone as far as what we do on this podcast, the place where, we talk about what is going on in the world of movies, and not much is happening in terms of really anything, and that it has to do a lot with, I just mentioned August is a dead space. It's not much action going on here now. If certain studios were perhaps a bit wiser, they could have moved some movies into this month that might have had a little bit of attention, considering how starved for attention anything is. Like, I know some films that were very good this year that just, got stomped out of the limelight because of, certain neighbors that were hogging the attention. For one, we had talked about in the last few weeks that Mission Impossible really should have saved their film for this month because, it's a terrific movie. And it would have been better serviced if it was like it had this to itself. Another film that was actually quite good from earlier this year was Dungeons and Dragons, but it got lost in the shadow of John Wick and others in March and everything. Hell, we might have even benefited if they had moved Shazam over to August as well. I don't know. There were some months where they tried releasing so many things at the same time, and when you try and do that, as we've been discussing on this show for so many years, all that does, in the end, really, is create an amazing opportunity for so many of these movies to fail. So what is out right now? Well, I guess we're going to talk about it right here on Red Spotlight number, 454. Yeah. It feels like it's at 500 at this point. I'm here, as I mentioned before, joined by David Francisco. David, how are you doing? And do you also want to mention to the people who are listening or watching what is a little bit different about this particular podcast that we're trying out or testing out or crossing our fingers that it doesn't all blow up in our faces?
We got video, baby. You can see my room. I can finally show it off to people. Because
it's funny how I can't see your room. I can see you. It's just like you're on OBS, I'm on Skype, and I'm seeing an image of the two of us floating in some nebulous space with trees and rock and stairs.
Wait, you're still on that? Oh my gosh! I thought
yes,
I took it out.
Yes.
You can get rid of that on View. Just. I didn't think. I thought it was just gonna go back to normal when I took it off. But yeah, just go back to View.
Okay.
And then I don't know. It's the together mode. Just click that. I guess it might get rid of it.
Yes. I was like, what's going on here? But then if I get rid of it, am I not gonna be able to see you?
No, I think you still be able to see me. It's just together mode is just some weird thing that you can mess with the background.
Well, I just got rid of together mode and it's still showing the same thing.
No fucking way.
So, no, yeah, fucking way. I'm seeing just the exact same thing that I just described to you. I'm not seeing your room, but I am seeing you, which in some ways is a bit of an improvement considering that when we were troubleshooting, it wasn't showing your image at all.
Yeah. What the hell? I know I got rid of it. That's so weird. And I don't want to mess with on my end because I'm recording.
Yeah, we're already on the recording thing, but at least I can see you. But it is really strange. It just looks like two floating heads on the fucking step in the forest or something.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny. But I imagine on your end, you're seeing what everyone will be seeing. If and when this ever sees the light of day. Just for a brief background for people who may not be aware of. In the past, we have attempted video stuff, but that in a way predates what this show is called, Red Spotlight Entertainment. This is a podcast that was started many years ago now. It's kind of changed throughout the years. So it first started in 2014 by Kyle Lira, our good friend Kyle Lira. And he was the host of the show for a long period of time. We didn't actually really start doing this show on a regular basis until 2016. So for many people, I would say that's when this became more of a regular thing. But a lot of the people who work on this podcast actually were doing this video series called Barely News Crew on YouTube, which was, a more, it's a very 2010s version of what you would see on YouTube in this particular community of movie fans, right? So everybody was just trying to make a name for themselves and trying to, come out with their own movie reviews. And I took a lot of inspiration from the AMC and Collider Movie Talk days. And you see that's a big influence on that channel. Peter and I, and our good friend Julio and Kyle would do those videos for a number of years, and then we ended up transitioning permanently over to podcasts and audio format from 2016 and on. And then in 2018, Kyle asked me to take over as host because he wanted to focus his attention elsewhere. Not that he ever left; he's always been here and continues to be here. But the show has been going on ever since, and we've been monitoring a lot of movie news. It's pretty kind of monumental when you think about, at least I think about it monumentally anyway, when you think about where the business and where all of the studios and where things stood in pop culture when we began to where things are right now. And also how much we have changed. When we started doing this, there was at a point where just about everything coming out of the movie news world was so positive and so exciting and so energetic, which is why all of us really, we all loved talking about the same thing. We all liked looking up the same things. And so we just took our conversations and put it on a show. And it was all so just exciting and positive. Then, of course, at some point, things did take a very negative turn because the state of the movie world took a negative turn, A lot of different genres of film started being pushed out of movie theaters and permanently onto streaming, which streaming as a whole has pretty much broke the entire, business model, which is why, in turn, the actors and the writers are striking right now. That doesn't, of course, even begin to mention how the corporate shills and, of course, the CEOs who are just, capitalistic creatures are just, going harder into that oligarchish territory where they're just like trying to hog it all for themselves. And so as the world really has become much more negative in tone, a lot of what we do on this podcast, for those that have been listening, is talking about, and a lot of what's happening in the world of movies is kind of almost in tandem. And so we don't really have any kind of inhibition into as far as what we think and how we feel the way things are. There's never been any kind of filter. Let me tell you that on this show. Don't even get me started on that situation. But our whole mentality has been, we just give you what our take is on the world, and we try our best to give you a rather informed perspective on a lot of big issues and small issues, and a lot of context, a lot of background, just so you know that where we come from, and that you can hopefully take away with this idea that we're coming from an honest place here, because we also have to mention that we're inhabiting a space where there are so many dishonest actors of all kinds, of all genres, of all colors, and of all creeds, it turns like. So I don't want to come off as oh yeah, we just tell it like it is, because people who usually say that turn of phrase come from a particular right-wing background. And I'm not saying, of course, that this podcast is not for right-wingers. It probably won't be, considering how some of you act. I'm going to be honest with you about that. But hey, it's the truth. But we do talk about a lot of the assertions and allegations and bogus conspiracy theories that come from the right wing and throw it at particular movies and talent and studios. And, we expose the lies for what they are. That's part of the movie news, and so we can't just ignore that. We also discuss the inner workings and politics of, the Academy Awards and the awards industry, also how a movie is made. And, if you've been following and listening long enough, you know that many of our voices and opinions change. Part of the reason for why we try not to, as far as we don't really discuss politics, not anymore anyway, outside of movies. If it does pertain to movies, of course we discuss it. But we don't want to, some of us have been asked, why don't we do a political podcast? Well, political opinions like all opinions, really age like milk. And it's much better to like, be cringe about movie opinions than political opinions, because those obviously have changed. And I can speak for all of us here that what we like and what we look for and don't look for in movies has changed dramatically from the very beginning to of when we were doing these conversations to where we are right now. So that's kind of our show in a nutshell. I think what we bring to the table is just, we're not professionals, but I do anyway, consider all of us to be very much informed as to how the business functions and how it operates. Furthermore, very informed on the realities and the crises that exist in our society and in our world, which better informs us to discuss the films themselves. And, one of the things that I love so much about movies is somehow, it is a brilliant art form, but, I always feel some of the best films just make you feel a little bit smarter. I don't know how it is that way. They also just, they make me feel more alive as well. I tell you, I just got out of watching Oppenheimer the third time, and that movie it goes quicker and quicker every single time I see it. And that is just a brilliant, brilliant movie that I understand why people are saying it's going to be discussed for a very long time, considering its subject matter and its execution overall on that on story and that character. But we don't sugarcoat anything. So if you've already been listening, all of this is just, this. You know how things get here. But if you end up being somebody who's like tuning in for the first time, because technically, I'm not sure if it's, well, I guess it would be the first video podcast. Welcome. And you've been following us for a long time. Well, I don't even know who that would be. Yeah. For so many years. It would be crazy if there was one person out there that was following us since the Barely News Crew days, because that would be a trip, man. Some of those videos, as a matter of fact, are about to turn 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was just with Peter and Alexis, two of our other co-analysts, panelists here. I don't know why I called them analysts. Panelists. They were here with me in this room, and we were kind of watching those old clips. And we've definitely come a long way. Also, I am long-winded, and I can go on for a very, very long time. And it's just my need to over-explain and give as much background and context as possible. But I'm not doing this alone. Clearly, David is here. David, again, we're doing this really as a test. Yeah. We're not really certain or sure if this is going to be something that actually goes on the air. Mm-hmm. But if it happens to be that way, how are you? How excited are you to be doing this? And why are you on this show again?
I don't know. I was your only listener for quite a while, and then I just kind of snuck right in, and so that's basically how I got on the show. I mean, it was great. You guys texted me a couple of times going, "You want to be on this podcast?" I'm like, "Sure," and
I even forgot about that. I forget that whole thing.
Yeah.
They even called you a contest winner.
Yeah, that was funny.
It was episode 100, right?
Yeah, that was I guess, first official one, I guess. And I just kind of stayed on afterwards. Me and Ale having the shittiest audio for quite a while. They'll listen to those early ones. Just kind of, and honestly, especially because of me, because we've all mentioned this before. I'm quiet. If people are looking at this now going man, this guy's quiet. Before that, it was even more.
Which is one of the ways that we've changed as people. You yourself, very much in terms of how you communicate and you present yourself, has very much changed as a result of the show. But to be fair to you, you weren't necessarily alone in the crappy audio-ness of the state of things. I'm hoping we sound great. I know we've been sounding pretty good for a while now, but sure. Again, at the very beginning, it's like handing a microphone to a monkey and seeing if it, and expecting it to sound great the first time. It wasn't. We were presumably smarter than a couple of apes, but it turns out we weren't, and it took us let's say the better part of 100 episodes to figure out the proper way these things should sound like. And no, it sounds pathetic, but hey, we were doing it we were doing it in the days where it wasn't common knowledge, where it wasn't a common thing. Nowadays, everybody has a podcast. Literally, everybody has a podcast, and they even do their podcasts on TikTok, and they get paid. We never get paid for this. I mean, we're practically nothing.
That's a big thing too. I mean, for right now, again, this is just a test shot here. For people watching the video, ignore the background. That is the logo for my other podcast, Quest Center, and I'm just putting something there.
Because something needs to be there.
Yeah.
No, you could put a red curtain or something.
Oh yeah, that's true, huh? That's so better.
Like a red curtain or a red, or even a movie theater background.
I'll look up like theater stage. Curtains or something like that, and then like that is actually way better. Wow, I thought I was gonna have to like make something up, but that's actually way better. I still need to make up for like the intro though. That's the one thing.
Okay.
And then, but also like, we don't get paid for this, but this isn't really our jobs or anything. So
which is why we can say what we want.
Yeah, we can say what we want. We can.
Bash corporations all day, all night for as long as we want, and as long as we will continue to do so, because I feel that's one of the positive attributes of watching us, is that you're gonna get our honest takes. We're not really shilling for a corporation here. We're not playing teams. All of us here are united by the commonality of just wanting a good fucking movie. And wanting the best in the business, and everyone to be treated, the same and fairly and paid for what they are owed. Really, that's just what it is. And we know enough, because of how long we've been paying attention, that when we see trouble, when we see problems percolating, we're going to call out and say it. I mean, I'm going to put it out there. And look, maybe at one point, I used to be the kind of guy that would just like throw around "I told you so's" in your face to say I was right. Every now and then I get one right. But really, the person that really calls it dead on, David, and I'm kind of spooked. I'm always spooked when years down the line, it ends up being 100% true. But if you go back into the archives of this show, again, at a point in time, I really was much more of an optimist. Then I became much more of a pessimist. You have the 2016 presidential election to thank for that. But before then, when we were doing these recordings, I was very optimistic and always trying to see the best in things. And I appreciate those people. But when it comes to, the sake of accuracy, when it comes to, reporting on the news and everything, it seemed like the ultimate pessimist. Well, I'm not even sure it'd be unfair to call him a pessimist, but it felt that way at times, especially during the time that when Peter would say, well, here's why this is actually a bad idea, and this is exactly how it's going to go wrong. And David, I know I don't speak for myself when I say this, and you can definitely chime in on this as well, but it has been rather spooky how many times it has happened where seemingly something interesting or positive comes to light. Peter says it's the worst thing ever. And then years down the line, not only does it end up coming true, but it comes true in exactly the way he predicted it would go. And one of the things that I referred to is just clearly remember, this has to be 2017, 2018, when they first announced that Disney was going to be exploring a streaming service. Well, it seems to me that what we have been saying all year long, since January, now is becoming common knowledge and common talking points now here in August. So we called this 6 months. I was the one that was saying, no, shifting it back to me. I was saying 6 months ago, hey, wait a minute. Bob Iger was the one that not only led his whole company into a streaming hole, but he led the entire industry into a streaming hole. Now, you're seeing people like, of all places, Grace Randolph talk about, wait a minute, this was Bob Iger's fault. But then again, if you go back to 2017, 2018, whenever that was first announced, Peter was saying, this is a terrible idea. Wow, imagine how much better off Disney would be today if they had somebody like him that had that foresight. But then again, it's not just that, is it? It's the system. And the system doesn't allow for people to have that kind of foresight to even be in the business in the first place. At that high level anyway. Which is, if their intent, hell-bent on hiring people with blind spots and the exact same blind spots, and you're going to end up being in the same position that you are and continue to be in. So that's what I was referring to. But David, I think you also would be in agreement there.
Sure. That was all you said. Sorry.
I know it's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, but then also I wanted to mention though, in terms of like quality of our videos, it's not gonna be consistent. I mean, I just kind of did this because I do want to like make editing. I do want to edit videos. I also want to start streaming and all that. So far, that's for sure a possibility now. Because I got.
Well, we're in the troubleshooting phase.
Yeah.
At this point, there are going to be issues that pop up, and I mean, I'll just speak for myself in this instance. Part of why it took a long time in the first place to even do this step is because, well, throughout the many years that we've been doing this, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in terms of a production problem, and so it for the longest time, whenever we find something that works, we just kind of like cling to it as long as humanly possible and try not to let go, because if we do, then, well, we're back to square one and we're in this situation here. So I know that when we have David on, we're going to have a consistent quality for sure. Mm-hmm. As far as podcasts that don't include him, well, we're going to have to be looking at other options, or maybe we'll find a breakthrough. Who knows? But I know that there are other options that we can utilize to bring about a consistency to the video and then put them on YouTube and see how those go. But yeah, I'm not even sure, and we haven't even discussed this amongst ourselves, but I am quite curious to know, David, that if the way that you envisioned it as far as editing this, did you think your preference would be to put the whole conversation as the audio version would be on YouTube, or did you have ideas of like cutting it down? Not that you have to, and not that you do. I'm not putting this on you. I was just curious about your mindset.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Because like I was trying to see if I can look for the curtain image that you said, and I found it, and I'm just about to put it in. Okay. What I'm saying is, do you intend to just put the podcast but in video version fully on YouTube, or did you have some kind of notion of cutting it down? I think I'll do the whole thing. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with cutting it down. The only time we do cut it down...
cutting it down is more work.
Cutting down is more work, and the only time we do cut it down on the audio versions is just because something happened in the middle of it. So I'll definitely do it for that still. Yeah. But other than to, like, keep it entertaining, I guess you can say, or, you know, people do that too. They just kind of cut it down to like just the quick bits, no silence and all that. I don't think I'll do that.
Yeah, there's no need.
Yeah.
I was just curious, and I wasn't thinking you were going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But we should know that there are people. One of the ways that our podcast is not as conventional as others is that we don't really pay any mind to how long we take. The usual runtime for a podcast is an hour and a half to 2 hours, more likely than not 2 hours. And there have been podcasts in the past that have gone over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I think there was one that we did 3.5 hours. In fact, during COVID, the pandemic year, when we were in quarantine, the longest podcast we ever did was over 4 hours long.
Like in a row, or like did you split it up in parts?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it was not in parts. You know what it was, though, is because we were having a really long Star Wars rant.
Okay.
That probably,
Right.
yeah, I think we basically, it was like doing a whole 3-hour show, and then the Star Wars thing took it over a 4th hour.
Okay.
Because we get pretty passionate about Star Wars.
I actually did a 5-hour podcast with Sergio, who's my co-host in Quest Center.
No shit.
Yeah, we talked about what was it, God of War Ragnarok, and it's a fantastic game. Like I had to describe every single detail about the game, and so we went for 5 hours. It's
No, really?
Yeah, it's
wow.
Yeah, it's up if everyone wants to see it. But we did God of War Ragnarok and God of War from 2018, which is both fantastic games. Yeah, but dude, I fucking felt the hours passing by. Oh my gosh! At one point, I literally go, "We're 3 hours in. We just gotta keep going." It's yeah, that was us.
It's a lot to talk for that long.
It's a lot, especially. Oh my god!
I don't understand how some people do like hours long live streams.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, I guess they do it to make money, but then they also have the assist of having a chat. Yeah, they really do rely on that chat.
They have the chat, but also, like, have you seen streams of people doing that for 12 hours, like React videos and something? Because there's this like big thing going on in the React media, I guess you can say, on Twitch, where a lot of the big Twitch streamers that do React content, they're not really what you would consider reacting to it.
Mm-hmm.
They're just playing the video. And then kind of go, that was funny. Yeah. Like, that's just all they're saying. And some of them literally leave while still playing the video.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but that's like a big thing. I mean, I don't know how big it is exactly, but like I know from all the like YouTubers that I watch, it's like a big thing going on. And so, yeah.
There are even live streams where people are just sleeping.
Yeah. That's creepy. That's why.
I never understood the appeal of that.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
Creepy is the right word for it.
I mean, I don't know what else it could be. Just like, why the fuck do you want to see someone sleep? That's literally like every joke horror style, like whatever. It's like shows always joke about that, like to about creepy people. You know, I don't know. I remember that was a joke in Family Guy where Brian finds some guy standing next to Stewie's crib, and he's just like, "Who the fuck are you?" And he goes, "Oh, Stewie pays me just to kind of like stare at him while holding a knife, like crazy in my face. Like, what the fuck?" Like, I don't know, it's just so weird.
Yeah, that is pretty creepy. So, as far as, talking about where we are with August, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is one of the films that's out right now. It actually just happened to cross $100 million. But putting a pin in that real quick and looking ahead to what's this month, Blue Beetle, Gran Turismo. And the thing is this about Blue Beetle. They're trying to create some hype, Don't really know what that's going to get them. But, I mean, some of the early reactions have been positive, to be fair. To be fair, also, the Flash early reactions are pretty positive, too. So, I don't know how much stock you want to put in positive reactions. Again, part of the thing is, if you follow this business and you follow this industry, you know that the early reactions will almost always be positive. It would be the sign of an amazingly awful film if the first reactions came back and they were bad. But usually the first reactions are positive. And usually the studios don't necessarily invite the critics. They invite more the Funko critics, like your Matt Ramoses or people who are literally just influencers. Not that we present ourselves to be, not that our platform suggests that, but do not mistake us to be influencers. I generally don't like that term at all. I don't know why or whose idea it was to call basically vlogging influencing or influencers. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth because the people in our civilization, in our society, who should be looked at as influencers are educators. You know, are people who actually are, you know, accredited and esteemed and, you know, have some sort of merit and accomplishment, you know, role models in society. And I'm not even saying you got to have a fancy degree and shit. No, I'm just saying the influencers in our world should be just good people doing good things.
Yeah.
And not to say that influencers are not. In fact, there are many wonderful influencers out there that all of us follow on social media, whether it be Instagram or TikTok. And it's not really an attack on them. It's just an attack on this name that they took, because it once again reaffirms this mentality that we are taking cues and life lessons from anybody but the right people, basically. There are plenty of people out there that have plenty of wisdom to offer, but that's not necessarily what we want. You were going to say something, David?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I agree.
I thought you
the whole calling people on YouTube influencers, or at least people who want to give life advice, I guess, on YouTube. It's just kind of weird. Just call them influencers. I don't know. I would even call us. I would barely even call us YouTubers or.
We're not barely, if that. Yeah, we're just people.
Yeah, we're
people. Yeah, we're movie fans.
Yeah, we're just a group of people that just really want to talk about movies. That's all we really want to do. You know? Yeah. And we're bored. And we, you know,
I've always liked to envision of getting to a place where we'd have enough of a following to have a chat. That way we can have more conversations with people about movies and everything. Because movies themselves can be very divisive. Everybody has many different opinions on films, and I know our opinions so a lot of our opinion, as a matter of fact, would be somewhat of a culture shock for some people. I mean, there are people on this podcast, and it's funny how, hell, if this didn't scare off the right wing, this will. There are some people on this podcast who feel The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie.
Yeah. That's us.
Yeah, basically. So it's, and I know half the people who are watching just left, basically.
Yeah. But I mean, I genuinely do like hearing other people's opinions and all that. And especially
you watch a lot of right wing circles.
Yeah, I watch a lot of YouTubers who just have completely different takes on on movies than I do and all that. And I just kind of, and I definitely hate it when they were their viewers on their YouTube channels are like try to call them out on stuff, and I'm just kind of like, y'all gotta chill out on that too. It's just like, it's just this whole discourse thing going on. I don't know. It's always kind of crazy to what people think about certain movies and all that. And I always just the way I go about it, like the way I can watch these reviewers, because some people would be like, "Why do you even watch them if like they just have completely bad takes or just horrible takes in general or something like that?" And I just kind of go, I just the way I go about it, I just kind of go, "Okay, you didn't like this movie because of this, but why did I like it? What is it about me that made me like this?" And then it just kind of you roll back to like a different movie that you're like, oh yeah, this movie did this and I thought it did the same thing, or maybe it might have done it better or something. And then so then that kind of the conversation never just leads to just is the movie good or not, or is this movie better or not. It's just kind of like I just liked it, and this is why. And
No, for sure.
and that's always, and it does help me kind of like just watching those videos has definitely helped me like process my thoughts on certain movies and how kind of, and then I bring it onto this podcast.
No, I mean, I feel like, a lot of people certainly cannot articulate why it is that certain things make them feel the way that they feel, And one of the best ways to get to that place is to watch another person articulate how exactly they feel. And oftentimes, if you end up getting a contrarian review, like for example, if I'm watching a review on, and this just happened recently with Barbenheimer, as a matter of fact, where people were talking about Barbie and Oppenheimer, and on both situations, they were rolling out, their negative, critiques.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear them, I know instantaneously, okay, either I agree or that's not at all how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like off the bat. And when you hear other people talk about why they didn't like something, ironically enough, it does help you kind of gauge, but no, I actually did like that. Oh, I also like that too. And hearing them, talk about why they didn't like something, in some ways can help click in your mind. Oh, so it turns out I liked it, and now I know why I liked that.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I all of us here are far from being closed-minded people. I mean, personally, I don't. When it comes to politics, I don't necessarily reach out because it just enrages me.
Yeah, I get
it. And not that it doesn't enrage me when it comes to movie opinions. Believe me, I can be just as animated, if not more so, than most people on the internet when it comes to particularly things that I love being mercilessly ripped apart like some kind of animal, which happens quite a bit. One of the people who I do like to follow, not because I agree with anything or most of the things that this person says, but I do happen to believe that on some level, this person comes from a good place, and I do learn a lot from their point of view. I learned that I think a lot of times that person's full of shit and I can see where they went wrong. And they put too much emphasis on this here or that there. But the fact remains, there's really so much to be learned. Like this person, I'm not going to name them. And I think you already know who I'm referring to. And you'll know it when I say this. This person went on this weird tangent in the review, which first of all, they didn't even give the movie or the what's it called? It didn't even give the movie the decency of doing an actual review. It was just like mentioned offhand in a news related video. Because this person was so despondent to it, but they had such a distaste for the Fabelmans. And not that that's not allowed. There are plenty of people who, again, I happen to adore that film. And when I hear people who have overwhelmingly negative and hatred-like experiences, I kind of go like, huh? Like, I don't understand. I can't relate. I didn't have that experience. But if you are one of those people, fair, we can have a conversation about that. But what I thought strange was the reading of it as... I didn't agree with that person's reading of the movie, which was like... the movie was actively trying to tell you that family doesn't matter as much and you should leave them behind. Mm-hmm. Or even further, which I'm not even sure counts as a reading or take, but it is, I do think it does count as something strange, was when this person, in one of the things that left a bad taste in her mouth about this movie, a movie, by the way, that talks about this kid who wants to be a filmmaker and is very much influenced by his two parents who are very different and end up having a divorce, happens to be made by Steven Spielberg, who it's literally his life story. That's what happened to him. And this person was basically going after him personally with like him also having had a divorce in his adult life as a way to discredit anything that happened in the movie. And I just found that to be very strange. Mm-hmm. Especially because very clearly, among the many things that the movie is about, a big theme is forgiveness. A big theme is forgiveness, and in many of the interviews Spielberg himself gave, it's very much something that he needed to excise out of himself to finally be able to forgive not just his parents, but then also himself for all of those years that he was keeping it bottled up inside. So that's just an example of a complete, vehement disagreement. You could not be further apart on a movie. But then, every now and then, you'll get a movie like Nope by Jordan Peele, and hilariously enough, this person and I are completely in lockstep as to how we feel on every single major point. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and again, hey, that's how movies work. Yeah. You and I certainly don't agree all the time. Mm-hmm. You like Joker. I despise it. I really like Joker. You like Dunkirk. I couldn't get... I mean, I did get through it, but I would never watch it again. So it's like, there's plenty of movies out there that... But you know, by and large, we do have a shared interest in the kinds of movies that we like. And so more often than not, you and I will be in agreement on a movie. But every now and then, we, you know... And then we also give our reasons for why certain things, you know, worked and what didn't work. Recently, you gave your reason for why you liked that very controversial cameo fest in The Flash. Yeah. Peter and I were like melting in our chair. Just like, what is going on? Like, Peter was cringing. Yeah. I've never seen him cringe so hard. So that's one example. But we know each other well enough to, more often than not, we are going to know how, generally speaking, we're going to feel about something rather than not. But that isn't to say there aren't some surprises. Not that I was entirely surprised, but in you know, we were just talking about Fabelmans. You also really, really like that movie. You put it number 2 on your list of favorite films from 2022. And in our show, and I really do kind of wish you were there too, because it would have spiced things up a bit. That's for sure if you were on there. But I know, not that it was the only thing on that list that, you know, caused some sparks from some of our people, but Kyle and Peter particularly were like, how could you, David? You were even accusing me of brainwashing you for even having that thing on the list in the first place. Which, by the way, isn't to say that Peter and Kyle disliked it. In fact, Kyle had it pretty close to his top 10. Peter didn't care at all for it, but Peter doesn't like Spielberg movies these days. So I guess it's par for the course for him. But that's how it is sometimes. All of you really responded to Prey. I did not. Like, that film just did not register for me on any level.
Right.
Now, I did happen to have something of a panic attack while I was watching it, but I did go back and see it again, and it didn't really play any better.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, it's not a bad movie. But that goes to show you that when I know an outside force could very well have colored how I feel about a movie, I have to go back and just to make sure. And sometimes, you know, when you leave a movie aside for a minute and then revisit it later on, it's one of the best things ever because it's like watching it again for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mutant Mayhem.
Yes.
Mutant Mayhem is out in theaters, and a lot of people are liking it. I know you had the chance to go see it in some kind of special preview, and it's been out for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Peter and I did also get a chance to see it, and I just thought it was simply wonderful. Like, to me, it wasn't necessarily 100% the TMNT that I'm used to. And again, to be fair, the TMNT that I'm used to was the 2003 to 2007 animated series that was on Fox Kids and also on Cartoon Network. That's my particular preferred version. I haven't seen... Well, that's not true. I'm sure I saw the older movies, the live action movies, but I don't really remember them all that much when I was younger and when they would air on TV. And I never sought out the 2007 animated movie, and I never sought out the Michael Bay movies. They were Michael Bay, right?
Yes.
Okay. That didn't really interest me. So, and I don't even mean to suggest that it's that different, because it's not. It's very much Turtles. Like, I would think anyway. If you're even vaguely familiar with the Turtles, then you know that what this is going to be. And this actually was a pretty faithful adaptation in that regard, with a couple of changes here and there. But I feel like what it's done better than just about every other adaptation of this series that I can think of is how superb they were able to craft the four main lead characters. Not just in terms of design, not just in terms of, what each particular turtle and what role they play in their team. Even the inspired choice to cast relatively unknown actors. Young actors at that, actual teenagers. And that's really the key, is what sets this movie apart from not just any, and I'm not just comparing this to all the other Turtle stuff, but just, comparing this to films of this caliber that are geared toward younger audiences. Live action or animation alike, doesn't matter, because there's plenty of animation that is not at all geared toward children. And I don't want the persuasion to be out there that like animation is this catch-all name that can be used for that, because I'm not going to necessarily sit here and tell you that what's it called? All animation is for kids, when that is one of the stupidest things that people can think of. When you just look at the various genres that exist within animation. But they were able to make these turtles feel like actual, real teenager kids that you would see in your normal everyday life. And that is something that is very difficult to capture, especially incorporating it into the, as you saw in the film, with the the cell phones and everything, incorporating it into the modern day. What was very different about this adaptation was how very much plugged in they were to our world. And they could do that now because this adaptation of the series is in modern times, which includes the advent of social media and technology. And you saw those kids, those turtles, their kids basically have access to all of it. And so one of the running gags, I guess, if you will, of their whole ensemble is references up the wazoo.
Oh my goodness.
And they definitely do rely on that as humor. I'm going to put it out there right now. If there was a weakness, if there was a point in this movie that I felt I was being taken out of it, and I'm not somebody that goes on these things and says, oh, this part took me out of it. I am very rarely, well, I was going to say I'm very rarely taken out of a movie, but I guess I mean to say I'm very rarely taken out of a movie and it bothers me. Mm-hmm. I should say that instead. You know, because there are, in every movie I'm taken out of it, but I'm probably because I'm just distracted and I think about something else in the meantime. But that's not really an issue here. The movie references, I don't know if they worked entirely for you, but it got to a point where they were happening so often where I did feel taken out of the movie and I stopped thinking about what was happening on there and started thinking more about the reference. Like, the one that really made me roll my eyes was the Avengers Endgame reference.
With Mark Ruffalo thing.
That was one of them too. So that's the one thing I can point out to you that comes close to bothering me.
Yeah. I can definitely see why it would bother you and other people. And at first for me, I was kind of like, ooh, you're like, because the thing when adding references, it makes your movie dated, and then you kind of don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because, you kind of want it to go on for a long time. But after thinking about it for a while, though, I was kind of like, actually, I don't mind the references in this movie. Because, in a way, the Turtles are timeless. Because you can keep renewing it. And making these teenagers feel like teenagers of the time, It's kind of like, there's a reason why it keeps getting like renewed over and over again on Nickelodeon and all that. You mentioned the one in 2007 or something. I saw the one, can't remember what year it was, but it was like a CGI version of it and all that. And that I kind of enjoyed. And so it's
a CGI animated version of it.
Yeah, CGI animated version of it.
I think it may have been post to that one.
Yeah, it might have been right after. And so I kind of don't mind the references on this one just because, like I said, in a sense, the Turtles are timeless in that you can keep it going on and on and on. I could see another one here in 20 years, and it really wouldn't bother me.
Basically.
And I'll be just kind of curious, like, okay, how are the teenagers of that time? Like, how are they going to relate to these new Turtles and all that? And so, yeah, I have to think about, I need to rewatch it again. I only saw it that one time, but like, I would like to go back to watch it again, like with that mindset that I just had.
I feel exactly the same way. I just haven't had the drive to go see it again because there are other movies I wanted to go see again. That's the thing. It's like it came out way too close to Barbenheimer. Like I mentioned already, I've seen Oppenheimer 3 times. I've seen Barbie 2 times. Like there's like only so, and in the middle of all this, I think I also saw Princess Mononoke. Because Studio Ghibli is doing, certain films again in theaters. So it's like...
I saw Ponyo, I saw Willy Wonka, and I saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, they told me you saw that in theaters after the passing of Paul Rubens. I was telling Alexis, because she was here with me, it seems to be a thing that your theater plays a movie about somebody who died recently.
Yeah.
Because last year it was... for Greece,
Yeah,
right?
well, that one
It
was
Greece.
already going to show. She just
It already was going to happen.
yeah, and she just
That's eerie.
Yeah, I know. And then the only big difference though is that they had it on 2 theaters instead of 1. After she passed, they put it in 2 theaters because they probably just knew that a lot of people were gonna come, and there were so many people there watching it. I think we mentioned it. Like there were people there wearing Pink Lady jackets and everything.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. And the Willy Wonka one.
But now if you go to the movies today, everybody's wearing pink.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny. And then the Willy Wonka one was so much fun too. There was a couple behind me, and they were just repeating the lines in the movie, and I was like, "That's so sweet." Because I'm pretty sure it was a couple that they must have bonded over this movie or something. I don't know.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you see old films in theaters, you feel it's a little bit more special because you feel like you're watching it with actual fans of this movie for a very long time. I mean, it takes that long. It takes a big fan of something to go and watch something old in theaters. I had the similar experience earlier this year when they did the Titanic re-release, the 4K 3D one, which was amazing. It was the best presentation. I don't know, James Cameron in this 3D thing, but he has a knack for it because it always looks amazing. But again, this movie has been seen by everybody, and everybody who's in that theater with me, I know, has already seen it. But even still, it doesn't stop the reactions from coming. Like the laughs that have been had so many times continue to come, but then also particularly the emotional stuff, like, the moment of the movie where, Jack's barely hanging on, and then, Rose lets go. And then, behind me, I hear people crying over it. It's like it triggers that emotional response. Or even older still. I didn't have an older gentleman sit, I think, behind me. He must have been like 60 something. When we last year, so I think it was a year ago now, about over a year ago, Peter and I went to go see E.T., the 4K in IMAX. And it got to the very end of the film, and man, I mean, that ending, that's my favorite movie ending of all time, because it always leaves me with just a weeping mess. And then just the symphonic mastery that is John Williams' music just blaring at the top of its lungs, not literally, obviously, because they don't, not a whole thing, but it is such an emotionally sweeping finale. Man, that guy behind me was crying. And he's 60. This is the 40th anniversary of E.T. That guy must have been in his early 20s when that movie came out, or maybe even late teens.
Probably.
So it's like, yeah, you do encounter a lot of these older fans when you go and watch these old movies. Which is to say, by the way, guys, if you're listening or watching this, don't just go to the movies to see the new movies. I mean, we do it. That's what we mainly do. We love to see all the new movies and go, I mean, we're the kind of crowd that, I mean, I can't speak for David and Alexis because they seem to have a cultured or catered community there where they don't have to travel out of the area. But I know for many a time we have had to leave our area just to go see movies that we knew we would have gotten eventually on digital, but we don't want to experience them on digital. We want to see them on the big screen. I mean, just in the last year, I'm trying to recount all the times that we've gone out just to see something. So The Curse of the Black Pearl was playing. We saw that one in July. We went to San Diego. At the same theater, we also saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in IMAX. At the same one, we also did a number of double features. We did The Whale and Avatar: The Way of Water in 3D IMAX. We also did Glass Onion and The Fabelmans. That was an amazing double feature. And we've also gone out to see E.T., Jaws. Every now and then they'll play an old one here. Like, for instance, they did The Thing last year. And for some reason, they're doing Studio Ghibli for us. So we just saw Princess Mononoke just this past week. which happened to be my first time watching that movie, if you can believe it or not. But if you're going to see it for the first time, see it on the big screen.
For sure.
So, yeah, go and watch old movies. Because they also, in and of themselves, do feel like events, which don't underestimate, really. At the end of the day, what it came down to, the huge success that was Barbenheimer, was that it was an event. Everyone decided, let's make this an event, and people love to be in the moment. And that's what's really propelled the amazing success of those movies. Like and to me anyway, I kind of feel like I'm getting one of the best of both worlds, because that isn't to say that, the films themselves have not been universally loved. They have been. They both received A cinema scores. Most people do in fact love both movies. But you've seen takes, you've seen critics that are like, oh, I vastly prefer Oppenheimer more, or I vastly prefer Barbie more. I love them both. Yeah. And they're on equal footing, and they're very different films. And it was just a wonderful experience. And also kind of an unbelievable one at that, when you consider just the sheer caliber of these movies, which will be big Oscar contenders, make no doubt about it, they will be. But big Oscar contenders in the last 5 or so years don't make up for that much box office. A lot of the films that end up doing really well, people wouldn't even have heard of them, much less seen them in theaters. We're talking about films like, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which did very well for itself considering its budget and considering the studio. It was the highest grossing A24 movie of all time, but it's still, I think it got to $100 million domestic. That's big for a film of that size and for the studio that it represents. But for comparing the grosses, Barbenheimer is just so much bigger. Barbenheimer is a cultural lightning rod. No one had any idea that Barbie would be $1 billion film. It honestly just, in all of the years that we've been doing this, it continues to just defy all of conventional wisdom. This is a Greta Gerwig film. To me, more than, yes, it's accessible to commercial audiences. Commercial movie making is known for having less of an auteur stamp and more of just, a generic made for the masses movie. Like a Marvel movie or a Transformers or a Harry Potter movie, like your general entertaining fare that we're more than used to making $1 billion. But we're seeing a weird paradigm shift. We've been talking about this all year long, where those kind of movies, like Fast and Furious, like the recent Transformers, like Little Mermaid, or like Indiana Jones, basically no one cared about for the most part. And we're seeing films like Oppenheimer and like Barbie, which are both auteur films. Both of those films are very much driven entirely and holistically by the people who are writing and directing them, and that is Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan. And both of those films are performing on a level that everybody else in the business could only wish. Like, just imagine. I feel really bad for literally everybody else, but man, I'm sure Marty Scorsese wishes his movies would make that much or get that much attention. I'm sure Steven Spielberg, and I know you and I feel really strongly about his last 2 movies, West Side Story and Fabelmans, are like a tour de force back to back. Like, oh my God, he just made 2 of the best movies of his entire career. Yeah. This is Steven Spielberg. But nobody saw them. Nobody. The Fabelmans only made $15 million in America.
That's so low.
It's so sad. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. West Side Story, I'm not even sure it cracked 50 million. I know in its first opening weekend, it barely even got to 10 million. And yet here we are. Barbie, make no mistake, is first and foremost a Greta Gerwig movie. If you've seen Lady Bird, and if you've seen Little Women,
Yes.
and by the way, if you haven't seen those movies, stop what you're doing and go watch those movies, because they are, not only in my view, some of the most precious films ever made, but some of the best of the last few years that continually are overlooked because of what else came out in, the corresponding years. Lady Bird came out the year of Shape of Water, Phantom Thread, Get Out. Little Women came out the year of Parasite, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Knives Out. So many films that surrounded that just take up so much. And let's be real about all those other movies. The difference between Greta's movies and literally all the other ones that I mentioned is hers are female-centric and the rest are all male-centric. And so that makes up for a big difference here in terms of interest. Unfortunately, that happens to be the case, which could also mean why they're not, thought of as often. But Barbie, not only to me, is vindication in believing so much in Greta Gerwig, but it at the same time just reminds you how great Lady Bird and Little Women are. And, I just feel like there are things in Barbie that, first of all, Barbie is a very unique movie unto itself where there's different things in it for different people, but really it is an artistic vision that through brilliant marketing was able to disguise itself as a commercial product. And yet in some instances, depending on who the audience would be, can work as both things at the same time. Miraculously enough, how else will you explain? Right now it's made $1.1 billion. $1.1 billion. It may very well be the highest grossing movie of the year, surpassing Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
And that isn't to say, by the way, that the Nolan movie is a slouch either. And as crabby as Christopher Nolan might be for Warner Brothers, trying to upstage him, in a way they did, but also in a way they didn't. I mean, if you think about it, I'm not sure this worked out the way that WB intended, because if you remember, WB was supposed to do this in a way to stick it to Nolan for ditching them for Universal Studios. But inadvertently, through the social media Barbenheimer craze, Barbie very much lifted the overall interest and lifted the overall box office revenue of Oppenheimer.
For sure.
The social media challenge thing where people who would not be interested, and I'm sure there were plenty of people who were like, what is this movie? Let's be real. I'm sure there are plenty of audiences that reacted that way, but they did it just so they can say they did the challenge and everything. Yeah. Thanks to Warner Brothers putting Barbie in that, they somehow ended up backfiring, I guess, in a way. I mean, not too much, because they just had their second most successful film in all of Warner Brothers history with Barbie, so it hasn't backfired too much. But in terms of the original intent, which was to screw it to Nolan, well, it didn't work out that way, because I think I'm not sure if it's this weekend, but at the moment, it's projected to pass over $800 million. This is a drama. This is not an action movie. And what's even crazier is that this is because, Nolan films all his movies in IMAX. It's taking the IMAX screens and it's all to itself for weeks and weeks on end. Poor Tom Cruise, man. He really did deserve those IMAX screens, because Mission Impossible was an IMAX, made for IMAX movie. More so than Oppenheimer. I mean, I actually I saw Oppenheimer in IMAX and it looks amazing, but it's not necessary. I don't feel anyway. I mean, it's a big screen. I'm never going to say no to a big screen, but it's insane to me how much interest there is in that. And it's going to result in one of Nolan's highest grossing movies ever. over $800 million for what it basically is a drama biopic, kind of, not really movie, where it's just scenes of people talking and talking quickly. And if you're, because with that movie, if you're not like in it, you miss something, you've missed a lot. Sometimes it's Oppenheimer, but it's a phenomenon and not something that I saw coming, but it's also just, it's not unwelcome. It's just shocking to see that in the midst of so much negativity happening in the industry about, the strikes and the shutdowns and all the bad faith actors and the greedy corporatists, in spite of all of that happening, there is this little like nugget of positivity here where two accomplished filmmakers were able to, through the studio system, put out a film that is holistically theirs and basically end up being revered by the masses. I don't know. Did you want to, add on to what I was saying? I don't mean to say it all, but it's just like what I'm thinking here, David.
No, I'm sure, man, you froze on my end.
I know.
I gotta save an image.
It'll unfreeze at some point.
Yeah, for sure. But I gotta save like an image next time to like
cover. If it doesn't unfreeze, I could just hang up real quick and then call back. Let me do that real quick. Okay.
I was afraid it was gonna happen. Oh no! You look. You're taking up the whole screen on the recording.
Oh shit! Oh no!
Yeah.
Well, everything changed now because now it's now I see you.
Yeah. And now
your
now
camera.
you see my giant forehead on the screen.
No, it's fine. You can fix it in real time.
Yeah.
I mean, these things happen on live stream, so it's like people. I mean, we're at a point now where people can put up with it.
Yeah,
It's fine.
I'm not gonna cut this. I don't know. It's funny. Why not?
No, you don't have to. People enjoy. We'll see. It's up to
People
you.
enjoy chaos.
Yes, we live for it. But you were saying.
I was gonna say. I'm sure one of us didn't expect the people paying attention to the pettiness of what they were doing and all that, but no, we pay attention and we found it hilarious, and all that. But it was just a big surprise of how really just went along with this meme, I would honestly call it, and everything. So yeah, I don't know what else you talked about. Yeah, I just
well, it seems rather moot to a certain degree, but anyway, we kind of got away from Teenage Ninja Turtles a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
That we seem to be just like jumping back and forth, but on the whole, anyway, I thought the film was unbelievably charming and wonderful, and to me, it's another one of these impeccably made artistic animated films post Into the Spider-Verse, where it would not have been able to be made anywhere near the way that it was if it wasn't for the success and the response to Into the Spider-Verse. It very much, in a lot of the designs were pretty grody, intentionally so. Yeah. I would imagine, but hey, it is a choice. But I know that I was kind of knocking a little bit of the gag, or at least particularly the movie thing, but on the whole, I thought the humor landed tremendously.
No, yeah. The biggest compliment that I can give this is the cast of the Turtles. They seem like good friends in real life and everything, and it's
one key thing. Seth Rogen, who is pretty much the brainchild behind this movie, and wow, thank you, Seth Rogen.
Yeah,
this is a wonderful movie. He insisted, from his own experiences when he would do voice recordings, he insisted that the four actors record together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not
separately. And that you can tell. You can tell it in the movie. Yeah. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, you can definitely tell. You can just tell the friendship and within the movie. You can tell that these are brothers. The characters are brothers.
Yes.
And everything. And yeah, that's the biggest compliment that I can give. The casting was just on point, and they carried the whole movie really. Which is, and I find it so weird because, like, you know, you mentioned, like, you know, Seth Rogen was smart about this and all that. Some people were like really hating on him before the movie came out, being like,
on Seth Rogen,
yeah, that like he's gonna be the reason that this movie's gonna suck. And I'm like, have you seen his movies? Like, I'm not saying like he's some like great filmmaker or anything like that, but like he makes some pretty entertaining movies. I don't know, I don't understand.
Seth Rogen is consistently one of the best entertainers out there. And as far as if we're going to talk about the comedy space, he definitely is one of the most consistent ones out there as far as getting a good story or a good product out there. And not, I mean, every time Seth Rogen, I don't understand why no one has asked him to do an award show performance. A performance. What the fuck am I saying? I don't know why no one has asked him to host an award show, because he's so funny. Like, it doesn't. He's always been funny, and then also, don't forget, Seth Rogen himself happens to also be a pretty good actor.
Yeah.
People forget he's in The Fabelmans, and he was really good in The Fabelmans too. Surprisingly, I shouldn't say surprisingly, but we're just not. Maybe because it was a dramatic role for him.
I think. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen him in a dramatic role, really, besides Fabelmans. Yeah,
no, I don't.
I mean,
I can't think of any other one.
No, honestly, I can't. I mean, I think the only one that can like, it wasn't dramatic performance, but like it was still like a really good performance, was Neighbors. That one was really good, but again, it wasn't like a dramatic performance. But yeah, I don't know. It seemed like he really did care about this franchise and just wanted to adapt it on his own way. And he did a great job. He really took advantage of the animation, especially Spider-Verse style animation and all that, and just kind of had fun with it. And I loved. So I saw a like early access screening of it, and they showed like a lot of behind the scenes stuff. They showed clips of the main Turtle cast, you know, talking to each other, like being together, doing the recordings and all that, and it just looked fun. And some of the like adults there, like listening to their or like watching them do their lines and all that, they would always like cut them off and everything, going like, wait, is that like an actual thing teenagers say and all that blah blah blah. Like they just started to figure out teenage slang and everything. It was just so fun. And so, you know, Seth Rogen, the one that's like, he really tried to push, like, try to make this for kids or teens today. So I don't understand the hate for him towards him. But yeah, no, he really did a great job in this movie.
I mean, here's, to me, one of the highlights of this award season. I'm going to play this small clip here. Seth Rogen completely destroying the CW on the Critics' Choice Awards, which air on the CW. This is an amazing moment.
I'm not saying the CW is bad. What I will say is it is the one network to receive 0 Critics' Choice nominations. You are saying it's bad. We're on your least favorite network. How did that happen? Nominate yourselves next time. You'll have one. No one will think it's weird. They'll think it's fine.
That's my kind of humor. And hey, award shows out there, you're kind of in need of a good host. Go look for Seth Rogen. But yeah, I don't know. People on the internet, oftentimes have like weird hang-ups about certain personalities. I don't really engage in that kind of stuff because it always just seems so stupid.
Yeah.
the rationale and reasoning for why people hate certain people on the internet, I don't care for, don't want to care for, so I just ignore it altogether. But more on the animation, beautiful stuff, especially when things were glowing in the sewer. Wow. And most of the movie is at night too, which it almost feels like a glow in the dark movie, even though most movies are glow in the dark because it's a big fucking light and everything. but yeah, I it was so funny, and really engaging the whole way through. But I do want to see it again though, just to like get my like whole feelings on it secure though. I mean, I liked it a lot.
No, yeah, same. I really liked it too. I really liked the character arcs that they went through and all that, especially with was it Splinter? They
didn't refer to him as Splinter. You notice that?
Oh yeah, they never did, huh? No, yeah.
Not once did they refer to him as Master Splinter. They just call him Dad. But Jackie Chan.
Yeah, because I mean that's what they did in the past ones, and I think that was kind of a good idea here, just because it's kind of weird to call your dad a Master Splinter. I don't know. So it'll work well. My one complaint, honestly, I don't know the lore of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't know like what it is in the comics or anything. But in the animated CG cartoon that I saw, I really like what they did in that Master Splinter was a human, and the ooze turned him into a giant rat.
Really?
Yeah. And in that one, he had like a past. One of them is that he just knows kung fu. That was part of his past, and then he passed it on to his kids. I don't like in this movie and in the Michael Bay one that he just learned it from a book, or he learned it in the TV. And he learned it in the TV. In this one, he learned it from a book in the Michael Bay ones, and then that's how he taught the kids. And I'm kind of like, that's kind of fucking lame, just because I like it, the idea of Master Splinter being the master kung fu master, yeah. And then when he starts to fight, that's when shit gets serious. It's like, oh man, if he's involved, you know, shit's gonna go down. And then this one though is just kind of like comedic. And I mean, it was funny. I liked his fight scene and all that, but I just kind of wish that's kind of what I like about Master Splinter is like when he gets involved, you know, shit's about to go down.
Yeah, I if I remember correctly, the version that I saw it, he was a rat, and he just mutated, and then he did learn through a book, I think, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or TV or something, yeah. Or I think in one version I saw, like he learned from a human who was learning on TV.
I know in the live action one, the old one, he was a rat, and his owner knew kung fu, and he just copied his moves somehow.
Yeah.
I know that's how it was, which is weird, but fine. I think it's okay for that time. You just kind of went along with stuff, you know. But I much prefer like the animated one that I saw, just because like he has a past, and in that cartoon show, he had a daughter that Shredder raised, and Master Splinter didn't find out about it till like way later on. And I was like,
here's an interesting question. In the CG animated show you saw, how big of a role did Baxter Stockman play?
Baxter
in the series, the scientist.
I don't remember seeing him at all. It was mostly just them fighting mutants and aliens, really.
Because in this movie, Baxter Stockman seemingly gets killed off in the very beginning of the movie, and the Baxter Stockman that I know from the show that I mentioned, the 2003 animated series, he's a major character.
Really?
Yes, he's a major villain, as a matter of fact. He allies himself with the Shredder, and then later on a special agent, Bishop. He's a major player.
Oh, wow.
In that series.
No, yeah, I don't really remember him. I just remember the alien brain creatures being big villain. And so...
You mean the Utrom?
I don't know. I'm not that big of a fan of TMNT, by the way. I'm just kind of like...
I think that's what you're describing. I think like they're not brains, but they're pink.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
I don't know if they're brains.
But yeah, that's kind of... And it's just, they kind of dealt with the monster of the week type of show. And I really don't remember them even bringing up the professor.
Interesting. But I'm sure this is going to do well enough. I would be surprised if Paramount does not pursue a direct sequel to this.
Yeah, I mean they set it up for it, and I don't see why not. I kind of hope so. I wouldn't mind, especially because of the cast. Again, they fucking killed it. They were great. I want to see them again.
So here's another thing here. So Blue Beetle's coming out. And we're a little bit of a predicament here. For those who can't tell, we're brown. We've not really had a major live action film really at all that really of this caliber in the blockbuster space. I want to be more clear about that, and even clearer with the superhero genre. There really hasn't been anything catered to us until now. Very much because Blue Beetle is heavily featuring, you know, from what it seems to be Mexican Americans, because George Lopez is in the movie too. So I'm not saying I'm trying to get out of seeing this movie, but here's the thing. I don't know. I'm curious about it. Just to see, you know, what it is, even though I have a suspicion that it's exactly a situation where what you see is what you get. It just depends on like how good or not the execution is for Blue Beetle. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about it?
I mean, yeah, from the trailers, it seems like you kind of know how this is going to end, this is how it's going to go. I mean, even in the trailer, they spoil something. I mean, I don't know if you would consider a spoiler, but there's a line that Blue Beetle says, and you're just kind of like, yeah, I thought that was going to be the theme of it, you know? And so, yeah, I just don't really see anything special, I guess you can say, about this movie.
It's just the timing is so unfortunate because, I mean, this movie was supposed to be for HBO Max originally, but then that went... That's not a thing anymore. But then on top of that, an even bigger hurdle for it to overcome are two very big things. First of which, and for a lot of people on the internet, this is a big deal, the idea that this is the second to last movie in this regime of DC films before it ends up being whatever you think reboot means with Superman Legacy in 2025, which is pretty hilarious how things are continuing to just flail out over there, with certain talent saying, "Oh, I wasn't let go. I'm coming back," and then a week later, she's lying. Man, it's pretty stupid. I don't know what they were thinking putting that out there, like that story of like, "Oh yeah, Wonder Woman 3 is totally happening, and I'm coming back." Gal Gadot saying that, like, I don't know who believed that. I don't know why she would believe that. I'm sorry, like nobody wants that. Especially when like they dismiss Henry Cavill, they're not gonna want you back, girl. It's just not. You guys are the face of the Zack Snyder DCU. You guys, unfortunately, it ain't your fault really. It's more so Zack Snyder, but you guys are the face of a decade of failed DC films. You're the last thing they want involved in their next regime. I'm sorry, that's not happening. So silly how we were just talking about that for a week. Anyway. So yeah, it's the second to last movie, and no one seems to care as much anymore because, at least online, because of it's not really a continuing universe. But then, from a more detrimental aspect, general audiences do not like DC films. As a matter of fact, it looks like, because The Flash so underperformed. The Flash, at the end of the day, you know, I'm not even sure. Well, it's not going to get anything back in the ancillary, but it's going to lose WB over $200 million alone. So it was so pitiful. In its like third week, I think the Wes Anderson movie almost caught up to it. It was like neck and neck. That's how like pitiful The Flash was doing. And that suggests there really isn't much interest in these DC films anymore, because that suggests to me the bottom fell out from under it. Side note, pretty hilarious to me how right-winger David Zaslav really believed wholeheartedly that the big movie that was going to save WB this year was going to be The Flash. And I find it so funny how spectacularly it failed. One of the biggest box office bombs of all time. And one movie, his lips were sealed. At least we don't know what he was taught, what he thought of it, but he didn't really. No reports came out of him thinking one way or the other. But the movie that he should have been championing, Barbie is now the second most successful movie in WB history. In fact, I think this week is going to pass The Dark Knight's box office total. Wow. It's going to pass The Dark Knight.
That's awesome.
Which is, funnily enough, also a Nolan movie.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting how that, lined up. But it's like, that right there should tell you that, principally speaking, movie executives aren't the smartest people. But also, that should also tell you that David Zaslav was someone that never should have been seen as a wise entity to begin with. Because, man, I would feel like the stupidest person alive if that happened to me. Where it's like, I bet on the wrong horse. In my own studio, mind you. I thought this was going to be my golden ticket, and it was the biggest bomb maybe in our entire studio's history. And then the one movie, which, by the way, why I called Zaslav a right-winger is because he is a right-winger. He's a conservative, and Barbie is not at all conservative. And I'm sure he doesn't really care for that movie. Mm-hmm. And yet, money talks, right? That's the capitalist in him. I mean, he probably may not like the movie personally, but I'm sure he loves the money that's bringing in because, fuck, they needed one profitable film at that studio. So I just wanted to put that up as an aside. But as far as Blue Beetle is concerned, I don't know.
Yeah,
I really don't know what to tell you. Like I feel bad for the cast.
I know, for sure. Man, I'm actually excited for the guy playing Blue Beetle to be in this movie because he's great in Cobra Kai and all that. And I mean, I don't know. Hopefully, enough word of mouth of the cast being good on screen.
Yeah, but it's like this. One of the things that Grace Randolph has always been right about is nearly every person who has come to work in a DC film these last 10 years has come to regret it. Nearly every person. Because think of all the many personalities whose careers have been like damaged or hurt by their affiliation or association with just DC films and their inability of getting their shit together. I mean, this guy thought he might have had a big break with this big fucking superhero blockbuster movie. But oopsie, like, blockbuster superhero films in 2023 are not what they were even a year ago. And even less so when the very studio who hired you basically just threw you under the bus a whole year in advance when they said that whatever continuity was in your films was being thrown out the window. Like, if anything, if there was hindsight's 2020, right? But I do feel like maybe this James Gunn stuff shouldn't have come to light until after these movies were in theaters. Then again, maybe it wouldn't have made that big of a difference considering how poorly. I mean, there's been not a single profitable DC movie. I don't include the Batman or Joker. I should say DCEU. There's been no DCEU movie that has been profitable on any level since Shazam in 2019. That was a long time ago at this point.
Plus, honestly, I'm pretty sure it would have leaked at some point that James Gunn's going to be in charge. So,
you're right.
I mean, there's just not much of hiding it. I think they should have waited until after The Flash, for sure, because that kind of for sure killed it.
Yeah, man. That was a disaster for practically everybody involved. And I mean, talk about people who come to regret it. I mean, Leslie Grace. Batgirl.
Oh, my God, yes.
Michael Keaton probably even feels like, what the fuck did I come back for?
I know. And it sucks, too, because of the directors of that one. They're the ones that directed the first and maybe the last episode of Miss Marvel. And I mean, those are probably some of the best ones in this show, especially the first one, because there was some creativity going on in there. And so, yeah, I would have liked to seen them work on a DC or on just any kind of action movie really and see what they can do. I don't know what other stuff they've
But
done.
just think about it. Patty Jenkins, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, Dwayne Johnson, Ben Affleck to an extent have all been humiliated. And that's not even getting into all the other controversial elements, like the whole thing with Zack Snyder, because he was fired basically when his daughter when she died. Great thinking, and then bring in Joss Whedon, and then Joss Whedon's career blows up after Justice League comes out. The whole situation with Ray Fisher, which I'm still not even sure what happened there.
Yeah, that was just weird.
Years later.
I don't even know what the heck he's doing.
I don't know. It's just like, it's sad, but it's also funny. But it's sad that it's funny. How much of a colossal fuck up these movies have been, where it's like on every level, no one can get it together, and everybody ends up leaving just deeply harmed or afflicted. Like, Affleck left that place so depressed. I think he checked into rehab. Yeah. Of all things. And he was supposed to write and direct Batman originally. All those years ago at this point. I mean, shit, even Will Smith, like, I mean, he not really wasn't. I mean, I guess one of the ones that they humiliated the most was Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, for sure.
They really were like, bye.
Also, just that whole thing of, what was it? The hierarchy.
The hierarchy of fuck. Is he gonna change the hierarchy of the DCU?
Oh my god, that was so funny. I was just kind of like, come on, man, you know.
He was right, though. He was right. It was just a monkey's paw situation where it blew up in his face. It's not exactly how he wanted it to do. But thanks to him and the failure of his movie, James Gunn was given the reins over at DC Studios. So thank you, Dwayne. Thank you. It's so fucked up. But the thing is, the sad thing is, though, things continue to be a little bit murky. Like, I didn't buy the whole Wonder Woman coming back thing, but like, I don't know what's going on lately where maybe the trades are grasping for stories, but like this came out at the same time that David Ayer was like saying that, oh yeah, James Gunn said someday they'll release my Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. Nobody cares, man. Nobody cares. And at this point, it just comes off like James Gunn was just telling these people what they wanted to hear so they can get him off his back.
Probably. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind. I probably would watch an Ayer cut, but like, it's not gonna happen, my guy. No, not everyone does.
Why would you? Okay, if it was sitting on a shelf somewhere, and it was ready for view, sure. Yeah. Upload it, but why would you put 1 penny in it to like? If you're gonna release an Ayer cut, I would assume you're gonna have to do a whole Snyder cut situation where you have to like. Can you believe they dumped $70 million to do that Snyder cut thing? And for what?
Nothing. No, honestly nothing. It just people saw it, cool. Then we moved on.
Did they?
I mean, I don't know how many people saw it, but like, we just moved on. We just kind of went, all right, I find this one better, but okay. And that's it.
Yeah, so that's August for you in a nutshell. Oh, and there's also Gran Turismo, but I'm not sure who cares to see that. There have already been reactions that have come out of it. Doug Liman is directing it, but the reactions have been pretty much what I expected they would be, which is like, it's exactly the movie you think it is, but the racing scenes are actually pretty cool. So if you care about that,
okay,
that might interest you.
That's cool.
That might be enough to interest you, but yeah, it's kind of a dark, quiet month here on the channel, from what I can tell. The only thing that might bring a little bit of life back in it, now that depends on what you mean by life, but all of us here with the exception of Peter, who he reminds us on every single instance it's brought up, we really do love Star Wars Rebels. And at one point, we were supposed to receive a sequel animated series to pick up of the events of the end of that series. But Jon Favreau came in and pretty much hijacked the entire process, killed the animation that was already being done on it, because he had the lame brain idea, being fueled by this mentality that somehow live action is superior to animation, when in fact he has it backward. Animation is superior to live action. But he had this stupid idea that let's do it in live action. So because of that, we have Ahsoka. And if you've been listening to our show these last few months, you would already know that we were not enthused to begin with because of that very fact. A number of us are still not sold on Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka, and it really does rub some of us the wrong way that Ashley Eckstein has been seemingly left in the cold. When there's literally an Ahsoka show coming out, it's her titular character's name as the title of the show, and Ashley's like nowhere to be seen. So it does not sit right.
Yeah.
That's number 2. Number 3, the trailers have been really confusing. And I think on 2 different areas. I'm sure they're confusing for people who have never even seen Star Wars Rebels. If you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, I don't even know how lost you are to begin with. But we've seen it, and so we know that. But there are also things introduced in that trailer that make us go like, okay, what? This didn't happen. This never happened. What are you here to do? Oh God, what are you gonna do? So, this month, which is August, Disney Plus is going to debut Ahsoka. These Lucasfilm Star Wars shows are a mixed bag. Everybody in the world loves Mandalorian until season 3, evidently. But I feel season 3 kind of vindicated you and me, David and Peter and Alexis and Kyle, which is like, hey, this show was not great from the very beginning. And season 3 really showed that. Season 3 was embarrassing. Yeah. Like, really embarrassing. I would even think there are parts of Boba Fett that I would choose to watch over The Mandalorian season 3. Because that was a particularly new low. But speaking of lows, Boba Fett in and of itself, that was very much embarrassing. Like, that was like amateur hour at best. But then Obi-Wan was pretty good. You know, it wasn't great. There were issues, but on the whole, we happen to enjoy a good bit of Obi-Wan. Then came Andor, which was perfect.
Yeah.
So, this is Dave Filoni's first solo venture into live action, so we'll see what happens. I don't know if he's directing all the episodes, but I'm sure he's written them all. I don't know what this means. I don't know. What do you feel about this, David? I'm very much scared.
Yeah, same. Honestly, I don't like what they're saying about the Ahsoka character, and also one thing saying that she's like Gandalf or something, and I'm like, she is not Gandalf. Like, she's not a wizard. No, it's like, she's literally not a Jedi either. So I don't know what you're gonna do with this character. I don't know what they're gonna change. I hope even if they do make changes, like explain them, kind of like give some background to it or something. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to that show really. I just feel like it's gonna be a bit of a mess, which sucks to say, but yeah, other than Andor, I haven't seen anything else that kind of like gives me hype about whatever Star Wars is coming up with.
Yeah. So that's where we're going to be, guys. And with whatever happens these next few weeks, well, we'll bring it back up and we'll come back online to share with you what we thought of it. But I think we're going to go ahead and cut it off here. David, thank you so much for being here. A reminder, of course, that our podcasts are available anywhere you listen to podcasts, and they're usually uploaded every single Sunday. Stay under our spotlight for more going on in the world of movies and more, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.